let's go ahead and get into this hot seat, man. Would you be okay with slavery if it still existed?
I would.
Whoa.
When the blacks in South Africa, in Africa, mommy
Mhm.
Africa, it was the black.
That's wild. That's wild, Jesse. That's wild. I can't get behind that, but you do have the right to have your own opinion. Welcome to the podcast, everybody. This is the one and only Jesse Lee Peterson. Now, this is a conservative radio host, pastor, broadcaster, founder of Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny, a nonprofit with the goal of rebuilding the family by rebuilding the black man. Most popular shows you probably know him from is the Fallen State TV and the Jesse Lee Peterson radio show. So thank you so much for coming through to the podcast today, sir. It's an honor to have you.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
I'm excited about this conversation. I'm gonna just start off by saying it's not too many people that I have on the platform that I'm really excited to talk to, but you are the exception to that rule. I really am excited to talk to you today, and I know a lot of people are going to be curious to hear your thought process on a lot of different topics that you talk about on your podcast and your radio show.
Well, I appreciate that, Dion. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. So I want to dive into the background about you really quick. Because according to Wikipedia, they have you most known for your political views, and this is their words, not mine. They have homophobic, anti-black, and white nationalists. Is any of that accurate? Let's start there.
No, none of those true. No things are true at all.
And why would they put this crazy, crazy idea about Jesse Lee Peterson out there on your bio?
Because people love lies. And when you bring the truth forth, they would do all they can to try to stop you, try to intimidate you in order to stop you. It's because our battle is a battle between good and evil. And so when you stand for what's right, you can expect evil people to come after you. So it's just the way it is. It happened with Christ. And so why not? It should happen with me and anyone else to stand up for what is right.
Absolutely. I agree 100%. So for the record, let's hear it from you. Who is Jesse Lee Peterson? In spite of what the internet says, in spite of what people say about you, who is Jesse Lee Peterson?
Well, Jesse is just Jesse. I grew up in Alabama on a plantation down in Alabama there. I worked the cotton fields and did all those good things that blacks used to do in the good old days. And I grew up in the Jim Crow law, which was an amazing time, probably one of the best times in American history. And I was taught to work by my grandparents, and they taught me that at 18 years old, I had to leave home because a man should be out on his own at 18. So they prepared me for that. And long story short, when I turned 18, I moved away. I moved to LA. I stopped off in Indiana, but I moved to LA, and I've been out here ever since.
Mm-hmm.
And for the last 33 years, I've been running a nonprofit organization called Bond, the Brotherhood Organization of a New Destiny. And we are rebuilding the family by rebuilding the man. We are bringing back God's order of God in Christ, Christ over man, man over woman, and woman over children. And unless we bring that order back, it's nothing that's going to work. It's going to only get worse as long as the man been turned away from the Father. And we have an entrepreneur academy where we teach a young man how to start their own businesses, or if they're in business, we kind of show them simple ways to make it continue to happen in a simple way. I started a credit union because a lot of the guys didn't have good credit, because in the black community, your mama mess up her credit or grandmama, and then she'll put credit in your name and then screw up your credit. So when you become an adult, you can't do anything, right? So we started a credit union so we can loan them the money. Those who are in the program and they pay it back with interest. I counsel and tutor. I counsel with men and women around the world, family and individual. We have a men's forum every first Thursday night and ladies forum every third Thursday night. And on Sunday mornings, meeting for everybody and their mama. I do radio and write books and all kind of other stuff, but I'm just Jesse.
Absolutely. I appreciate that. So, speaking on just Jesse, what is some of the things have you learned over the years? I would like to consider you your season in this game. You really have been in it for a while. So let's first of all just say congratulations for that, because not a lot of people can really hang in the industry that long. You've been in this for what, 30 plus years?
Yeah, 33 to 34 years.
Wow. So that's
amazing.
That is amazing. That's amazing. So just with all of the experience that you have, you've literally watched this country change with technology and all of these different things like social media and the impacts it's had on the culture. What is some of the things that really concern you the most when it comes to Black people in this country?
Number one is that they've been lied to. They've been set up to fail in life. And it started with a little bit before the civil rights movement, I hear, but it definitely started with the so-called civil rights movement. The worst thing, other than abortion itself, the worst thing that ever happened to the Blacks was the civil rights movement. Since that thing happened, the Blacks have never returned to normal. They've only gotten worse generation after generation after generation. And the civil rights movement was a socialist movement. It was never intended to lift Blacks up or to cause us to come together as one nation under God. It was always meant to divide and conquer. And these so-called civil rights, Martin Luther King and Jesse Jackson and all of them, they sold the Blacks to the Democratic Party for their own personal gain. They wanted to be their leaders, so they sold the Blacks and they became the leaders of the people. And it's just been downhill ever since then.
Gotcha.
Our battle is not about no such thing. There's no such thing as racism, sexism, homophobism, Allahu Abbaism, Debbie Dadism, white supremacism, and anti-Semitism. It doesn't exist at all. Our battle is a spiritual battle. It's a warfare between good and evil, right versus wrong. And the Blacks used to know that in the good old days. But when they stopped thinking for themselves, they forgot. And they believed into a lie that some other man, a white man or anyone, could hold them down. And they've been begging and blaming and just been down here ever since. They removed the fathers away. When you take the fathers away from the wife and the children, you open the gates of hell, because the man was created to lead, not the woman. It's not in her nature to lead. It is her nature to follow. And so Black people have not had a real leader, which is the father, in their homes. And that's why they're still suffering. It has nothing to do with the white man or slavery or Jim Crow or systemic racism or any of those things.
Okay, I definitely hear you out on that. Now, one thing I will say is I watched a couple of your interviews and I noticed that when you speak, a lot of times people don't let you finish your thought, finish your sentence. And so one of the things I wanted to do, like here, if I ask you a question, I want you to be able to really feel like you can really take the floor and explain your full thought process without being interrupted. Because what happens is there's a lot of times where people are so emotionally attached to a certain topic because it's a sensitive topic that their emotions get in the way to the point where they won't even hear or understand anything that's coming out of your mouth. So, for the people that's listening right now, I want you to put your emotions to the side for a moment. Whatever emotional bias that you have to what he is saying, put that to the side and really give him an opportunity to express his perspective and why he thinks the way he does on certain issues. Now, when it comes to, and I'm just going to touch on this just a little bit, when it comes to the civil rights movement, that's something that a lot of people are emotional about. That's our Black culture. They take that as a moment of triumph, in the way that it's been presented to us, especially in schools, the way everything has been presented to us since birth. It's been presented to us a certain way. So I'm quite sure you can understand why a lot of people will feel so passionate about that topic. So when it comes to that, give us your perspective, because from your perspective, you were born 1949. You're 74 years old, so you actually witnessed this thing. This is nothing that you just read in a history book. You actually lived through it. So from your perspective, go ahead and take us to that moment. What was really going on? What was the environment like? And why do you feel this way about that issue? Like, what did you see specifically impact Black people from that?
Yeah, I always tell people that I am older than dirt. God made me, and then he made dirt that I may walk on. So I've been around for a while. When I was growing up, Black people knew, and not all, but most, they knew that the battle was a spiritual battle, and that there were evil Black people and white people, and there were good Black people and white people. And so they taught us to treat people the way we would like to be treated, because it was a spiritual battle. It was a right and wrong. And so we grew up getting along with those who got along with us, and we were taught to work from day one. I grew up working, going to school, being responsible. And when, and even under the Jim Crow law, it existed, and we knew the Black signs on it, the white signs on it, but it really wasn't a big deal. It just wasn't a big deal because it wasn't stopping us from living. I knew Black people, including my own family members, who owned land, buku land. I knew them who started businesses, and those who wanted to go to college, they went to a Black college. They would come back as professional, and there wasn't this complaint that someone was holding them down. And then they got married, they had families. One of the reasons that I didn't make a child I made a baby when I was 18, leaving home, right? But I didn't want to have a shotgun wedding, so I was careful not to make babies when I started dating as a teenager, because Black people have a sense of respect about themselves. And if a Black woman got married, she would have to either go out of town and hide and have that baby, or have a shotgun wedding. They made us do that, so I knew that. I have one aunt, she and her husband got married, and they bought buku land, and they had like 15, 16, 17 children or so. All of them went to school. Those that wanted to go to college, they all went to college. They were professionals. And it just wasn't that. And then the civil rights movement came along, and they started telling the Blacks that you can't make it because of racism. You want to be able to ride at the front of the bus. You want to do, they just see some of the people. But it's funny, man, that some of the older Black people knew that the civil rights movement was a bunch of mess. And they would tell us not to get involved with that, because they were trying to control the Blacks and not help the Blacks. They were stirred up a mess, right? And so a lot of Black people avoided it for that reason, thank God, because they didn't get screwed up in the mind. And the civil rights movement caused the Blacks to become angry. Well, the anger starts in the home. We'll talk to that later. But they caused the Blacks to become angry by blaming someone else. And anytime you have anger, you are an evil person, and Satan is your daddy. And so the Blacks turned away from God toward the devil. Now they worship the devil, calling him God, because they have not overcome their anger, and they have not seen, they can't see what's really going on. And the last but not least, the civil rights movement made a deal with Lyndon B. Johnson, the Democratic Party. Because when I was growing up, most Black people were Republican. Even Martin Luther King was a Republican, right? But they made some kind of deal with the Democratic Party under Lyndon B. Johnson that if you give us the Black votes, we'll let you be the leaders of the Blacks. And they agreed to it. They gave in the black, they sold the black over to the Democratic Party. They became the leaders. And it's just been a mess, man. They took out the father too. They knew to remove the father because the father represents sons of God. Every man, even though most men are weak, they've been turned away from the father. They represent God. They're sons of God, right? And so they took the father away. And that's why it was so easy to manipulate the black woman. And now the black woman is so out of control, it's going to take Jesus Christ himself to come back to bring her to order, because most of them think that they're better than the men. And that's what's happening. The civil rights movement was a setup.
Wow. You really went into detail on that one. So I know a lot of people going to have to digest all of that information you just said.
Yeah.
But I think to sum it up, you just said it best as far as your dialogue with that. You said the civil rights movement was a setup. And you brought up an important part there. You said most blacks, not all, as you say, not all,
not all, but most.
They were Republican. Now, this might be a news flash for a lot of people based on the information we know today, because people that's growing up now, let's say you was born anytime after the 90s, you just kind of assume if you black, you Democrat.
Yeah.
So with that mindset, it could be a news flash to a lot of people to even think at one time black people voted Republican.
As a matter of fact, the Democratic Party at that time wouldn't even allow blacks in. And so as a result, some black people along with some white people got together and they started the Republican Party. And so at one time there were black congressmen and black senators and black representatives because they were Republican. And the Ku Klux Klan, the KKK, went after the blacks, KKK, not because they were black, but because they were Republicans and they were gaining power. And so they were trying to stop the Republican Party. They were not trying to stop black people because they were black, but because they were Republicans. And the KKK were Democrats at the time. But the blacks want you to think today that the KKK went after them because they were black, but that's not true at all.
Wow.
It's because they have power. They were gaining power.
So, racism. You're leading me right into that topic. Racism. to in your words, it does not exist. Define what you believe racism means to people today versus your definition of what racism or their lack of racism there is.
Right. Well, today, racism has been used in order to control the blacks by other black people. Maxine Waters, the Wicked Witch of the West with the low IQ. Sheila Jackson Lee, the old evil hag out of Houston, Texas. Jesse Jackson, Al Sharpton, the race hustlers, and people like the NAACP. The NAACP is a political pawn for the Democratic Party. They don't care about the blacks at all, right? And so this word racism is used to keep the blacks angry. Because when a person is angry, you can control them. You can make them feel good, you control them. You make them feel bad, you control them. So this word racism is merely a made up word. It's not even real at all. It's just a made up word, and they put false meanings around that word in order to control the blacks. It's not real. And I promise you it's not real. It's just a made up word. It's just a word. And then what they did, they caused the blacks to forget that even God said, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, but against spirits and principalities and wickedness in high places, right?
Right.
And so the blacks forgot about that, and they went into their intellect and they believed the lie that that some man can hold them back or some woman can hold them back. And they've been believing that, and because they believe it, they have created a bad environment for themselves. It's just not true. But when you're a clear mind, we have a clear mind and free thinkers, you can clearly see that it's a spiritual battle, and there's not one human being on earth can hold you back from anything, because you are your world. You are the world, not somebody else. But when you believe in a lie, you allow other people to control you. You know how it is. Are you dating or married?
I'm
If
married.
I may ask.
Married.
You know how it is when your wife wants to control you?
I'd already told my wife, I said, we gonna have some real conversations over here. So we all ready, Jesse.
Whenever she wants to control you, she makes you feel good. Oh, honey, you so holy. I love you. You're a real man. You're a man of God. I love the way you provide it. And then once you believe those lies, you feel good. And now if she want a new dress or something, she's like, oh, honey, I saw this dress over at Sears. I really like it. It costs $100. You're like, what? $100? We can't afford that. And the moment you tell her no, her attitude changes. And then she said, you're no good. I don't know why I married your cheap self. My mama told me not to marry you. Now you're angry.
Now,
And when you get angry, you try to make her feel better. So you give her the money because she's angry too. You try to make her feel better in order to keep peace. But if you didn't have those emotions, but have perfect love rather than those emotions, you could not be made to feel good or feel bad, and no one can control you. That's what they're doing to the blacks. They know how to make them feel good with that word, and they know how to make them feel bad. That's why you have to overcome emotions.
now this is so funny because my wife is in the chat and she just commented. She said that is facts, just not in those words. So she agreed with you to a certain extent, but I can tell you from our personal relationship, she's a godly woman, so she's definitely down to that type time. So that leads me to my next question. Do you
Let me ask, what is a godly woman? I'm sorry, I just don't know what that is. What is that?
So when I say she's a godly woman, I mean she submits to the authority of the man who's also submitting to the authority of Christ. You get what I'm saying?
Oh, so she obey you?
Yeah, she does.
Nice.
Yeah. So
is she black or white?
She black. And so this is my yes, she's black. So here's my question, because it leads me to that blanket statement, okay? The one size fits all. You ever heard of that?
Yes.
So in a lot of the I guess I could say perception you have, it can come off to a lot of people as if you're talking about everybody. So is there a difference between a woman who submits to the authority of her husband and follows the word the way we're supposed to do it versus the one who does not? And I know it seems like a simple question, but I just want you to break it down for the people that may not understand.
These principles that I've just spoken applies to everyone, because everyone who's born through the mother is born of sin. There's not one. And everyone who is born of the mother must be born of the father. You must be born again. And there are men and women who are waking up now, and they are going and forgiving their mothers for turning them against the father. Because when they turn them against the earthly father, they turn them against God. And the mother recreate the children her image, which is evil, right? And so for everyone who has returned to the father, they understand what I'm saying. But for those who have not, they are angry and emotional people. Every human being on this side of heaven. It applies to every human being that's born through the flesh of the woman. But they can overcome, and only a few are going to overcome, because most people will not admit that they're wrong. They will blame everybody else. But those who seek the kingdom of God in his right way, return to the Father, when they go and forgive their mothers, God forgive them. And when they forgive their father for not protecting them from the mother, then God will return them back to their earthly father, and the rest is history. Absolutely. So it applies to every mankind.
Okay. I definitely can see where you're coming from with that. Now, a lot of times I watch your interviews and we understand that you had a heart change the moment you became a Christian. At one point you were a Democrat, and then in your 30s, I believe around it was, when you became a Republican. So what was it about that heart change that also caused you to switch parties?
What happened was, I was inwardly, I was unhappy, I was miserable, I had a lot of conflict. I was lost really, and I was going to different churches, the black churches, and I was reading the Bible. If you saw my Bible, it's all different colors because the preacher tell you the color of the Bible. And I was paying tithe, I was participating, volunteering, and all that. But I still had conflict. I even did that stupid thing, praying tongue. What the? I did that, whatever the preacher said, but nothing was changing on the inside. So long story short, I finally asked God, because whenever I would ask the preachers what's wrong with me, I'm not getting any better. I have fear and I have doubt, I have worries, right? And I would ask the preacher what is happening. And they would say, "Oh, you need to read the Bible more." I'm like, "But I read the Bible. What the?" And so I finally asked God to let me see myself. And he allowed me to see that I resented my mother, but I didn't know I resented her because resentment feels like love. That emotional feeling feels like love, but that's anger. And when I saw that, I couldn't believe it. And it was holding me back in life because my mother resented my father because he got her pregnant. And when she told me about it, he denied it. And she ended up marrying my stepfather before I was born. So I wouldn't be born out of wedlock. It was an embarrassment in those good old days to be born out of wedlock. And so I forgave my mother. When I forgave her, God forgave me. And he allowed me to see. And he took away all my fears, all my doubts and worries and insecurities. And I've just not been the same since. And so I went and I read the Democratic platform and I read the Republican platform. And the Democratic Party platform is about anti-God, anti-family, anti-constitution, anti-military, and they are anti-black. And they support everything that goes against God. And then I read the Republican platform because I didn't know any Republicans. And it's for God, family, country, constitution, freedom, and independency, and all that stuff, right? And so I went back and I said to God, you know, God, I have one more favor I need to ask for you, right? From you, one more favor. He's like, what is it? I said, you have changed my heart from anger to love, and I'm a Democrat. And I just read the Democratic platform, and I can't identify with that anymore. I read the platform of the Republican, and I can identify. And I asked, could you forgive me for being a Democrat? He's like, oh yeah, sure. And he forgave me, and I became a Republican.
Got you. Now, I definitely want to go back to something that you said earlier. As I said, I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm going to let you say your whole piece, and then I'm going to respond. You said that speaking in tongues was stupid. Can you elaborate what you mean by that? Because I know a lot of people are going to hear that and be like, whoa, wait a minute. What did he just say? So I want you to go ahead and elaborate on that.
Speaking in tongue is of the devil. And when the people are speaking in tongue, they're speaking to the devil. Just think about this. God is a clear God, right? But the preacher have told the people, you can speak in tongue. And then they take you to the back room somewhere and tell you how to do it. And then they tell you, in order to understand what you said, you got to have another person there. And so God is so dumb that he going to let you speak in this crazy so-called language, and he going to tell somebody else what you're saying and what he's saying to you. And the people are dumb enough to believe it. God is a clear God. He speaks directly to the person. He doesn't have to tell somebody else to repeat what you just said. It is evil, it's dumb, but when you have anger, you believe lies. And that's what the church has done. They have deceived the people.
Now, that's a hard stance you got right there on that topic.
What a mess!
Yeah, that's a hard stance you got on that topic. And I already know we're going to disagree on that 100%. And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. You know, I think it's important that people understand that you can disagree and still not hate one person. You get what I'm saying?
That's right.
And so I 100% disagree with you on that 100%. And my reason is because it's unbiblical. You know, if it wasn't from God, then how did they get the gifts of tongues? And I do understand that there is a tongue that can come from the devil. There is a false tongue. But to say speaking in tongues completely is from the devil, I can't agree with that at all.
So, and I understand that. So why would God tell you to do this. Thank you, Jesus. And then he got to have somebody next to you to hear it, and he going to tell them to tell you what he said. What kind of God is that?
That's the way he wanted it to be. I feel like if he's God, he has the right to do as he pleases, correct? So if God
Right.
wanted it to do it that way, it's not our place to say, why would he do it that way? You get what
May I
I'm
tell
saying?
you what? Yes, I do. May I tell you what speaking in tongue is?
You can tell me your perception of it.
And I'll make a long story short. When you tell people that they need to go and forgive in order to enter into the kingdom of heaven, you must first go and forgive. You're not going to get in until you go and forgive.
Mhm.
And he makes it clear. Don't ask for forgiveness. I will forgive you. And when you forgive, I will forgive you and draw you into the kingdom of heaven. Within, right? And then when he tell you that your battle is a spiritual battle, it has nothing to do with racism. It's not physical at all. When they tell you that there's no one on earth that can hold you back, when you stay present with God rather than living in the so-called past or the future, which does not exist. And when they tell you no such thing as racism, no such thing as ism, right? When people get mad at that, they're getting mad because they can't see. It's speaking in tongues. It's so simple to the seeker, but it's not to the one that's lost. God's ways are simple and very clear, and He's with us. Inside of us, we have God, we have Christ, and we have the Holy Spirit. We don't need someone else to interpret for God. He is quite clear.
Okay. Like I said, I'm gonna let you say that's your perspective on the topic because I
Right.
believe you do have the right to have your own perspective on it, and I believe everyone should definitely read the word for themselves. You know, study, show yourselves approved, because one person can interpret one thing one way and another person can interpret it another way. But I think it's important to be reminded that the Holy Spirit is our teacher, and so we need to seek wisdom from the Holy Spirit, so that way we will be able to understand some of the things that we may have questions about when it comes to certain topics.
That's right. When you were born again of the Spirit of the Father, He tells us to walk in the Spirit, right?
Right.
Not in the intellect. When you overcome the anger, which is of the devil, anyone that has anger, Satan is their daddy, is their God, right? When you overcome that, you're going to live in the present where God is instead of lost in thoughts.
Mm-hmm.
All thoughts are all lies all the time. God is wisdom. And when you forgive, you will walk in the spirit of God. And that's when clear understanding will come.
Gotcha. Now, I don't want us to get in the rabbit holes, what it's called, where we keep talking about the same thing over and over again.
Right, absolutely.
So for the sake of time, I'm gonna move forward on the topic. But I do want you to go back whenever you get the opportunity and really get into the Corinthians and the whole interpretation of tongue things, because that's biblical when it comes to that topic. And so obviously I respect you as a person and I respect everything that you do. So we're gonna keep moving forward on the topics.
May I
Now,
just ask you one thing about that?
yes, go ahead.
Have you noticed that all people who speak in that kind of tongue thing, they are miserable. They have fear, they have anger, they're lost. They don't have perfect peace at all. And if we are sons of God, we should have perfect peace. And the people who speak in tongue have no perfect peace at all. They feel good sometimes. That's not peace of God. Then they feel bad. Then they're up and then they're down. They speak in tongue, but they have no peace. And Christ came that we may have perfect peace.
And again,
Uh-huh.
and again, I can't agree with you on that. We got different ideas, and it's okay. It's cool. You know, you got your perspective on that. And like I said, just like everybody else, you know, we gotta lead by example. If I'm asking y'all, put y'all emotions to the side and hear this person out, I'm gonna do the exact
Yeah.
same thing. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna literally just asking you questions. I'm getting your response, because so that way we can probably get some insight on how you come up with some of these things that you say. I do believe I do believe you got a heart that cares for God,
Yeah.
and you have good intentions. when it comes to a lot of the things you say. I do believe a lot of it, because of the shock value, is misinterpreted, misunderstood. People may not give you the opportunity to speak.
Yeah. But if they didn't have anger, they could not be shocked by anything. Only the law gets shocked by what someone says or does.
Hmm.
But if you can see, you can't be shocked, because once you understand what's happening inside of you, that the spiritual battle is going on in the mind, then you're going to clearly see what's going on in other people, all people, and you're never shocked by anything.
Right.
God doesn't leave us shocked in darkness. Only one with anger, which is of the devil, live that way.
See, look, we can't agree on something. I agree with you on that. So let's move a little bit forward really quick, because I do want to respect your time. As far as the goals that you have right now, what do you focus on?
In all honesty, I have no goals. I have no plans. When I was in darkness, when I had anger, I used to make goals because that's what people said I should do, right? But it never worked. It didn't make sense. And when I did make a goal and I got what I thought I wanted, it didn't bring me any peace at all. It was only when I allowed myself to die from the ego, from ideas, from plans, and from what I think I want or need, then that's when all my needs are met. So I just live in the present, in the moment. And for the last 30 years, he's done amazing things to me. And because we don't know what we want, and we don't know what to pray for, we don't know what to ask for. And so I'm just giving up all that, let go, and let him work through me. So I have no goals.
I got you. Now, as far as you spending time, your relationship with God, how would you say is your relationship with Jesus?
I don't quite understand that.
So when I say like your relationship with him, do you spend a lot of time in that prayer closet with him? Do you really seek the kingdom first in everything that you do, relationship wise?
100. Well, I seek the kingdom of God first because I know not what I want. I know not what I need. And I'll allow his will to be done. Whatever that is. And so far, I have not been disappointed about anything. And I used to do the little hooping and hollering and praying, oh Lord, help me, bless my mama, bless my daddy, give me a house, give me a wife, and all that crap, right? But I realized, he caused me to realize I didn't know what I wanted. And so what I've done, what I do now, he said, when you pray, be still and know me. Don't go into your prayer closet, hooping and hollering and carry it on, because everything you're asking for is all vanity. It's all ego. It's of your father, the devil. So now I get up in the morning at 3 a.m. because I had to be at my office by 5 to do my show. I get up and I be still and just allow myself to observe and let his will be done. And I just take it one moment, one day at a time. And it just really, really been amazing, man.
Absolutely. Now, before you
Yeah.
go, I'm gonna put you in the hot seat really quick, because I know you do this on your show. So I say it's gonna be interesting just to have you in the hot seat for a moment.
Before you put me on the hot seat, may I just say this?
Yes.
The one thing I'll make it short too. The one thing I want to urge the blacks to do, they got to forgive their mothers and grandmothers. They are angry at their mothers and grandmothers because the mothers and grandmothers impose their will on the children. And they turn them away from the fathers, their earthly fathers. And the kids, the adults and the young kids are yearning for the father. They're yearning for the love of the father. And so they need to forgive their mothers and grandmothers for turning them against their earthly fathers, because the mothers and grandmothers hate their earthly father, right? So they turn the children away by playing victim, tell about how bad your daddy was or your daddy left you. Fathers don't leave their children, they leave the mothers. But the mothers make the children think that the father left them because the mothers are so insecure. They want the world to rotate around them to give them a false sense of security. And so I want to, and the blacks are being told that it's the father, it's the father. So they think they hate the fathers, but they really hate the father with the mother's hatred, because they have taken on the identity of the mother. Any man or woman that has anger, fear, or judgmental, they're acting like the woman. They have been recreating her image, because if you notice, Satan is the woman's god and the God above is the man's God. And so that's why God said there will come a day when I'll return the children to the fathers and the fathers to the children. And if they go and forgive their mother, don't ask the mother for forgiveness. You forgive them, they couldn't help themselves. God will forgive you. And forgive your father, the light will come on and you become free. You'll be a free person. So they got to forgive their mother.
So you made me just think of another question for you. When it comes to a man and a woman, and they both are already submitted, you know, in the proper order of things, their offspring. I understand we all have to be born again because we're all born in sin. But do you believe it's possible for that female, let's say they had a daughter, to be brought up in the right way, to the point where there's no hatred towards the mother?
Yes. If the mother go and forgive her mother or her grandma who raised her, so that God can forgive her and give her back her identity and take away the mother's identity, because the mothers create the daughters in their image, and that's why the daughters end up acting like the mother and doing the same thing that the mother has done, right, to her. And the daughters don't want to be like the mother. I never will be like my mother. I'll be patient. I'm not going to be angry. But you can't help it because it's spiritual. And when you have anger toward your mother, you can't help but take on her identity, because you become subject to what you hate. You hate, and when you hate them, you become like what you hate, right? And so if that mother go and forgive, let's say your wife, and it sounds like your wife has already done all this. Let's say your wife go and forgive her mother. Hey, mother, I'm sorry for resenting you. I realize now, because I see it in me, I can't help myself, that you couldn't help yourself. I'm just like you. God will forgive her, and he would take away the spirit of anger from her heart. And if she should have a child, the love would come, not the anger. Anger is hatred. And so nothing would come from her but love, but it would be the love of God, not the anger of the devil.
That's deep. That is deep. So let's go ahead and get into this hot seat, man. So
All right.
for the hot seat, got a couple questions for you. Now, these are gonna be real direct. And you know when you ask people direct questions, you don't let them beat around the bush. Okay?
That's right.
So I'm returning the same favor to you. Okay?
All right.
Do you love gay people but hate the sin?
Repeat that. Do I love gay people? What?
Do you love gay people but hate the sin?
I love gay people, but I hate the false. I don't hate it, but I understand the false identity in them that's driving them to make them think that they're that way and they're really not. It's a false identity.
Right.
Yes.
Okay. If you were president and you could have the option to create a law that didn't have to go through the normal checks and balances, means you literally can create a law and it's going to go in effect immediately, what law would it be?
That's a good question. I would create a law that would never impose itself upon the citizen, that would never take away their freedom of speech, their Second Amendment, their right to move about and be free. I wouldn't want no law to do that to them.
Right. So just give us an example. Like if you wanted to create a law that's going to go in effect, what law would it be based on everything that you see now?
That we would be able to wholeheartedly agree and disagree without trying to take something from the person for disagreeing, take their jobs or calling them names. We will have the total freedom of speech.
So basically, you would have the protection from the government to disagree without retaliation.
Yes, absolutely.
I can support that.
And the right to bear and carry arms. We have a right to protect ourselves from the evil people.
Okay. The next question is kind of like the opposite of the question I just asked. What law would you ban if you had the power to do so today? Anyone. If you only could just pick one to get rid of right now, what would it be?
Affirmative action.
And
I would
explain
ban
why.
it totally, because I know that blacks are capable of doing it for themselves. And I know that it comes to self-reliance, hard work, discipline, self-control. And I wouldn't want a law that would give them anything based on color, period, or excuses they may have. Because anyone that make up an excuse is a loser, right? And I know that that would not help them. So I would ban affirmative action because I love them enough to make them work for themselves and appreciate life.
Gotcha. If the Republican Party started to share similar views as the Democratic Party, would you still vote Republican?
As a matter of fact, they've already started doing that.
That's where I was going with it.
And the we now have a one-party system in our country, and the Republican Party see that blacks are easily used, and so they're starting to offer them the same thing the Democrat Party are doing it in order to get them to vote for them. And so what I do now, I vote for the individual, like the Great White Hope. You know who the Great White Hope is?
I know you're going to say Donald Trump.
That's right.
And that's actually what my next question is.
Yeah. The Great White Hope love America, and he want opportunities for all people, jobs and less restrictions and regulations and lower taxes. And he is for America. So I'm voting for the Great White Hope but I can't think of not one other person in the Republican Party I would vote for.
So my next question was, why do you place Donald Trump on this, what I like to call a pedestal, because you call him the Great White Hope? What is your reason? You kind of just said it a little bit, but just go into a little bit of detail. Why do you support him so heavily? Because
he is from the old school, and he is a man that has no fear, no doubt. He loved what's right, and that's the way men used to be in the good old days. He put America first, and now you don't find men and women doing that. And he doesn't care what color you are, how poor or rich you are. He put America first, and the opportunities are there for anyone that wants them. And I love that about him.
Okay. Would you be okay with slavery if it still existed?
I would.
Whoa. You got to explain that. You can't just say that, Jesse. You got to explain that. I got to get my fruit punch.
Because slavery is of the mind. It's a psychological condition. And so if you had a free mind, you could live on a plantation and still be free. Just like the blacks used to do in the good old days. Black people were not, there was some, of course, they did not hate their condition. You can go to jail, and if you have the wrong mindset, not only will you be in jail physically, you'll be in there mentally. But if you had a clear mind, you'll be in jail physically, but not mentally, and you're free. Blacks are enslaved today worse than the plantation or slavery has ever been, because it's in the mind.
Now, as I told you, probably 2 or 3 times in this interview, I can't agree with you at all. That on that one. And I'll tell you.
You don't agree? Okay, go ahead.
I'll tell you why. Because from what we do know to be fact, they were mistreated. You know, they were beaten. Even if they did it wrong, and however you want to look at it, it was to the level of it was being like less than human when it came to that situation. There's a lot of people, and you can look at photos. They say a picture is worth 1,000 words. You can look at plenty of photos of people entire backs being completely stripping from them. So you can't even say that we're exaggerating these facts. Now, because of that, I don't believe no human should be treated like that. Even slavery in the Bible, it wasn't to that level. You get what I'm saying? So what I will say is in America, American slavery has a very harsh picture when it comes to that. And so for you to say that you would bring it back, because in essence, that's kind of what you were saying. You were saying you're okay with that. That's why I can't agree with you at all.
2 things about that. Well, maybe 3. One is that there were black people owning black slaves as well in America.
Right.
And
Mama, I didn't make it about color though. I'm just saying slavery in general. I didn't say white slaves or black. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. When they show you pictures of slaves, if you notice, for the most part, they only show you the bad one, because you have good and bad in all people, right?
Right.
So they show you the bad slave that was beaten by the white man. It's like you told Harpo to beat me all my life. I've been beat. So
I'm drinking my fruit punch, y'all, because Jesse, you is something else, man. I ain't gonna lie.
So they show you the bad ones, right? So they can deceive you, get you angry, and control you. Why don't I show you the ones that did get beat? And when they do show you those who did not get beat, you know what they call them? House inwards. Uncle Tom. They lived in a big house because they want to control you. And so they show you the negative, never the positive, because they don't want you to be free.
Okay.
That's why they show you the ones who have been whipped, but not those who have not been whipped.
So let's see. Let's say it like this. Okay, so my question was, would you be okay if slavery still existed? With everything you just said, even if that was just rare occasions, where that took place I don't believe it was rare. But if let's say it was, you would still be okay with that?
Yes.
That's wild. That's wild, Jesse. That's wild. I can't get behind that, but you do have the right to have your own opinion. So I'll leave that.
And may I ask, who treat blacks worse today? The white man during slavery, the few that did that, or the black people treating other blacks today?
Repeat the question because I didn't quite understand it.
Who are treating the blacks worse now, worse than slavery? The white people, some of those white people who enslaved the blacks, or the blacks treating blacks today?
To answer that question, we go back to the good and versus the evil. And right now, what I will say is evil is just rampant everywhere. And when it comes to our own community, we do lack accountability in certain areas. For an example, I would use this as an example. If I put a knife in a room on the table and it's a white man that did it, let's say a white man put a knife on the table and there's two blacks in the room, it's the white man's fault for them taking that knife and killing each other?
That's right.
It's not. They still had to make the decision to pick up the knife and then use it against one another. So it don't matter how you shape this whole picture to be, we still at some level have to be accountable for our actions. One of the excuses I do hear a lot, oh, well, why do they put an ABC store in the black neighborhoods all the time? Always a liquor store. But at some point, we still have to go in the store and buy the alcohol. You get what I'm saying? So
that's right.
I can't agree with a lot of that thought process when it comes to that. But slavery for me is different because of the way it was done in this country. Just completely wrong.
So who treated the blacks the worst? The white man in slavery or the black man and black people in today? Because in slavery, the white man will whoop you and make you work, right?
Right.
But the black man would kill you, shoot you, rob you, rape you, try to destroy you. You are more likely to be killed or robbed on the street today from another black person than you are from the average white man. Black on black crime is worse than slavery could ever have been. They're killing each other by the numbers.
My thing is that's where we talk about accountability, right? So
right, but it's the same spirit though.
It is. But when we talk about accountability, I believe you're responsible for your own actions. And so if you're talking about a free world versus an enslaved society, it's a little bit different when you're thinking about that question. Because when you think about that question, you're talking about who's more responsible. Well, at that time, it would be the white man because they were the one with the whip. So now what's happening in our society, we have the whip. And it's like, what are we doing to each other when it comes to that? So
you're slave master to one another.
Right. So when it comes to accountability, that's where the difference is in that question. So it's hard for me to merge them together and say one is greater than the other in that aspect because in one, like I said, one was free will, the other one was enslaved. So two different types of people.
So you don't believe that the slave masters who had slavery, those few that beat the blacks, that wasn't a spiritual issue?
Of course it was. Everything we do in this life is a spiritual issue. We don't wrestle against flesh and blood, but against principalities and high places. And so whenever I look at a situation, it's always spiritual first. In fact, the spiritual realm is more real than the natural realm. And so whenever you see a situation take place as a Christian, I can't speak for nobody else, but as a true believer in Jesus Christ, you should already be looking at it in the spiritual realm first.
That's right.
When someone has,
Let me ask.
Go ahead.
When the blacks in South Africa, in Africa, Africa, it was the black. It was the blacks who sold the black to the Arabs.
I'm aware.
And it was the Arabs who took the blacks around the world and sold them around the world, right?
Correct.
And then it was the blacks in Africa who used other black people as money when they wanted to buy property or when they wanted to buy some grocery or some pot or something, right?
This is all facts.
They would sell other black people,
right.
And they would beat the blacks if they didn't go along with them. Was that the same evil spirit as some of the whites did to the blacks in this country?
I would say yes. Yeah, it is.
Well, why do you think the blacks don't ever bring that up?
Because they've been lied to, Jesse.
No, I'm talking about the black so-called leadership who are telling the blacks how bad the white man was to them. Because they know about
it's all about power. It's all about power at the end of the day. Yeah, I mean, if they won't bring it up, it's because by not bringing it up, they have information, they have knowledge about certain things that they can use for or against somebody. That's why you ever heard the saying, knowledge is power. So what you know and the next person doesn't puts you at a certain advantage or disadvantage when it comes to certain situations, depending on how you use it to hold somebody back. You know, so there is situations where they may be able to know certain things like that, and they purposely don't want you to be educated, because then if you're educated, you're going to have a different opinion.
You'll be a free
different
man.
Perspective. That's why the Bible says the truth shall set you free. So the moment you're able to have this truth, you're able to see the world from a different perspective. And one of the things that I know to be true is because I actually did my homework, is not because I was taught it in school. And so if all of your information is coming from school, you're not actually learning, you're being indoctrinated. And that's what people don't understand.
Amazing. Amazing.
That's just the truth, Jesse. I mean,
that's deep.
I hope people really grab that picture, because if you only know what you know based on what somebody else told you, you didn't do any homework. You get what I'm saying? You didn't do any research. You literally are a sponge as a child, and you're soaking up information coming from everywhere. And that is why the rainbow community is attacking the kids today, because they're just sponges. So what's going to happen, they're going to grow up in an environment where everything that we know is not natural is going to become natural to them. And then now their thought process is going to be completely different to the generations that were before them. A different world.
So who is worse? The white man who beat the black to make him work, or the black man who hide information to blacks to
definitely the one that hides information, because if you're hiding the truth, you have evil intentions.
That's right.
There is no real reason for you to hold the truth back from somebody. You know what I'm saying? So if you're hiding the truth, you got evil intentions. If you got evil intentions, then you ain't of God.
That's right. And where is the best place to hide money from the blacks?
Oh, I thought you were going to say the best place to hide information. I was going to say you put it in a book.
And so the best place to hide money from the blacks is where?
I would say in stocks. Ain't nobody black really looking at stocks like that.
I say in a book.
Okay. It's same similar principle.
Yeah. They're not going to look at the book and find out for themselves.
Right. And that's so important, though. So I really hope people understand that from our conversation today, that I want people to understand that you do come from an angle where you didn't just believe everything that you heard, and you actually did do a little homework. And that does make a huge difference, y'all. I can't really express how much of a difference this makes, because sometimes I got to ask myself, like, do I even feel like engaging in this conversation with this person? Only because I understand how far they are from the truth based on the crap that come out of their mouth sometimes.
Yeah.
You know the difference. Like if you're a little bit closer to the truth, okay. But when you way out, I'm going to have to pray for you. I'm just saying, because sometimes you believe the lie to the point where now it's like part of your heart posture towards the situation. And as you know, it's hard to change someone's entire belief system if they wholeheartedly believe that based
You
on the
can't
lie.
change their mind if they don't want to change. They don't want it. You can't change. Even God can't do it unless they want it. God will just let them suffer in their hell, in their misery, until they want to change.
Like,
I gotta ask you this, if I may.
Go ahead.
Did you forgive your mother?
Now, I never had a reason to forgive my mother because I've never held anything against her. I grew up both of my parents. I grew up with both of them. We grew up in the church. We definitely did. When I say grew up in the church, I'm talking we did get that good gospel every day in my household. So it wasn't so much about me doing my own thing, finding my own way. It was always rebellion. If I did something on my own, I knew better and didn't do better type thing.
Right.
So we were taught and brought up early.
So you never forgave her?
I never had a reason to. And this may be something else me and you just going to disagree on, and that's fine.
No. I'm not neither agreeing or disagreeing. I'm just asking. So you said, no, you have not gone and forgiven her, right?
Well, to forgive somebody,
because you didn't have it. You didn't have anything to forgive her for. You're saying that, right?
Right.
And so was she perfect in the way she raised you?
I would say so.
She made no mistakes at all.
I think she did everything she was supposed to do as a mother.
And so she made no mistakes at all?
I'm honest, and this is my honest opinion. I believe she did everything she was supposed to do as a mother. She had 5 boys, no girls. Just
real men make boys first. Did you forgive your father?
Did she forgive her father?
No, did you forgive your father?
I did, yes.
And you forgave your father but not your mother?
I forgave my father because of the way we were raised and a lot of the things that we did go through in my upbringing. But because I did forgive him for those things, I understand he was doing it the best way he knew how. But at the same time, he also was doing it because he actually wanted to protect us from being involved in certain situations. And then our rebellion put it that way anyway. But that really was just us trying to figure out life on our own and not doing it the way we were supposed to.
And so don't put your personal business, ever put your personal business out there. So you forgave your father for not your mother. Can you tell me what one of those small things you forgave your father for?
I just said it. It was because of our upbringing. You want me to be specific? You just told me not to put my personal business out there.
Right. Don't put your personal, but just little stuff that people want to try to use.
I can't put out a little bit and not give you the full context.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so your father was imperfect, but your mother was perfect.
Well, don't you understand that when it comes to that relationship, right? It's God over man, man over woman, woman over children, right? So if my mother was getting her information from my father, just like in the Garden of Adam and Eve, when Eve sinned, it didn't really take an impact until Adam did it too. Correct?
Well, right. It didn't impact. Right. It didn't impact until Adam obeyed the woman.
Right. So therefore,
and that's why every time the man listens to the woman, he suffers.
Right. So sometimes in the situation, it's possible that women do have wisdom, but the man is not going to listen to the woman's wisdom because of that order. You get what I'm saying? Sometimes the order is like that. So I wanted to ask you about that too. We getting so off topic. We getting so off topic right now from the
women don't have wisdom.
Yeah, they do, according to the Bible. You don't believe the Bible said they got wisdom?
Where does the Bible say a woman has wisdom?
Let me see. Proverbs chapter 31, verse 36. Her mouth is full of wisdom. Kindly teaching is on her tongue. That's what the Bible says.
Amazing. The only way that a woman can have wisdom is if they have returned to God and they are let go of, God is now their God and Satan is not their God. And so God will work through the woman as he does the man, but until she overcomes the hell that's in her. And the hardest thing in the world for a woman to do, the hardest thing is to admit that she's wrong. She's going to blame somebody else. She will blame somebody else before she will admit that she was wrong. Because in all honesty, except for the parent, nobody else had anything to do with her anger or being wrong. But she'll blame everybody but herself. It's like the mother do the children. It's like your father didn't do this. It was your father when it really was her. But she'll play victim and make the kids think it's the father.
Gotcha. And for the sake of time, we're gonna get to the last couple of questions. So, would America be a better place? I feel like this is the longest hot seat we've ever done, y'all. Would America be a better place if the schools had never integrated, like came together, black and the whites?
It would be a better place had they not forced the integration. If they had allowed the people to come together naturally, like they were already doing, it would be a better place. But if they had never forced integration, America would be an amazing place because everybody would be doing what they need to do on their own.
Okay, and my last question is, what characteristics does your potential wife have to have? I know you up in there right now, but let's just say with the mindset that you have now, if you could go back to a point where you were really praying for those things that you said at one point, what does that type of wife have to be for you?
She would clearly have to obey me. On the first date, the very first date, my first question would be, are you willing to obey me? Will you obey me? And if she doesn't say, yes, I will obey you, I'll say goodbye. Thank you for the date. Bye.
Y'all, this is the hot seat. Jesse Lee Peterson in the building. Question. This is just an extra.
That's why I tell men never marry an educated woman, and because an educated woman would never make a good wife and mother.
Oh, man. I gotta ask, are you serious? Like, I know sometimes like people can look at you, they can't really tell because you got a straight face. So like sometimes when you say things, are you saying it to be funny or you really mean it 100% of the time?
Sometimes I make jokes, of course, but I'm serious as a heart attack about these things.
Okay. All right. And so do you think that could be a reason why you did not get married?
I was engaged twice.
Right.
And while we were dating, the woman acted like, oh, I love you. I obey you. I do this, I do that, right? But as soon as I got engaged, the first thing they want to do is start complaining. Why are you always working? You so this, you put everybody else first. And when they started that, I take my ring back and take it to the store and get my money back because that's let me know that she was putting on a front while dating. And what I'm seeing during the engagement is going to be worse. And I don't like divorces. And so I figure if I ever got married, I didn't want to get a divorce, so I just didn't do it. It wasn't meant for me to do it.
Amazing. That's what you
amazing.
Say. All right, John. Yeah. So look, that's Jesse Lee Peterson.
Amazing.
Let them know where to find you, brother. I do appreciate your time today.
Go to rebuildingtheman.com, rebuildingtheman.com, or jesseleepeterson.com, jesseleepeterson.com.
All righty. Thank you so much for your time today. It's been an interesting conversation, to say the least.
If we have more people that will interview and have discussion the way you've done tonight without judging, it would be a better place. Because, like you said, we don't have to agree, but we don't have to hate one another for not agreeing or disagreeing. We can disagree and still be friends. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
But the average person cannot do that today. So you're very blessed and fortunate to be able to do that.
I really appreciate that. I do appreciate that, especially with all your experience that you do have in doing this.
Yeah.
You know, and what words of advice would you give to somebody? And we'll just close out with that.
They got to get to know themselves and overcome anger, and the rest is easy. But they must overcome anger. Anyone that has anger, I don't care how many Bibles you read or don't read, how many so-called secular degrees you have. If you have anger, you're of your father, the devil. Don't tell me Jesus had anger. He did not have human being anger because their anger is of the devil. He had understanding. He had wisdom. He could see and deal with evil without hating it, right? And so overcome the anger within yourself and you can be free. But you must be born again of the Father.
Now, I'm going to disagree and agree on some of what you said. You said Jesus didn't have anger. I believe he had righteous anger. I believe he was able to be angry and sin not. That's what I believe.
Right. He had a kind of anger that never judged. He saw injustice, but he didn't judge it because he knew that it wasn't the person, but the person was possessed with the spirit of evil. They were doing things that they could not help themselves. They were driven by evil. It wasn't them, but it was the devil in them. So he didn't judge them. He dealt with it, but he didn't judge them. But human beings today, they see it and they judge it, or they get angry. Anger is judgment, and they think that's righteous anger, but that's not righteous anger.
Okay. All right, y'all. So look, this is Justin Lee Peterson, because we're not about to do the rabbit hole conversation again. This conversation has been amazing. So can you say that for me one more time?
It was amazing.
Thank you.
Amazing.
Thank you so much for your time today. It was definitely a pleasure to have you.
I totally enjoyed